Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Angles and Attitudes. As always, my partner, John. John, how you doing today?
Hey, Mark, how's it going? We got a special one here this afternoon.
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, we have a broadcaster who has some long, illustrious bloodlines that run through the family, and he's done them proud. We'd like to welcome Daniel Patrick Kelly to the broadcast. Dan, thanks for joining us, and welcome to Angles and Attitudes.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah, Mark and John, and thanks again for juggling your guys' schedule today to accommodate me. It's great to be on with you guys. It's great to be talking about the great game of hockey. It seems that we're gonna jump into.
You got it. And I had to say Daniel Patrick Kelly because everybody says, well, how come he's not a junior? Well, your late great dad, that wasn't his name. You guys flipped it around. So you are Dan Kelly, and that's what we're going to call you going through here. So, but can't run from the fact that you come from bloodlines. Your younger brother, blues broadcaster, you coming out of the University of Dayton, became a broadcaster yourself. What was it about? Was it just around the family all the time that you were just like, hey, this is pretty cool. I probably won't be a pro, but I love being around the game, and this will be the best way for me to do it?
Yeah, and Mark, I got to correct you though. My much older brother, John, I think John's got 12 years on me, but I know what you're saying. But,
sorry.
But yeah, it's actually, I can remember my dad telling a similar story. He got to when he was like 15, 16 years old. I think the highest, I think he maybe played one game at junior A, but he's still eligible. But he was a junior B player. He wasn't a great player, played football as well. But he knew if he wanted to be around the game, and he loved the game so much, that broadcasting would be the way to stay involved in the game and make it his life. And it was a similar thing to me. I loved playing hockey. I was never thinking broadcasting. I thought I was going to be the next Brett Hull or whoever, Keith Kachuk or whatnot. But you get to that age that you're 16 years old, and I was a good hockey player, but obviously not good enough to be a professional, and that became pretty clear. So start to think about broadcasting just like my dad, because I grew up, I think I lost my father when I was about 14 years of age, but I was fortunate. I was the youngest of 6, so I was the spoiled baby in a way. So by then my dad was really comfortable in his career, and he was Dan Kelly. He was doing network stuff. So I went on charters. I went to Winnipeg. I went to Chicago Stadium for playoff games. And actually Chicago Stadium, coincidentally enough, I ended up working for the Blackhawks for a couple of years. That was always his favorite stadium in the world. He called the 72 Stanley Cup Finals there when they lost to Montreal, and I think he had a famous quote that he could feel the press box shaking. So just having that lifestyle and being in the locker room, being around the players, I was like, man, yeah, I want to stay at the Drake Hotel when I'm older, and I want to stay at these cool places and go to these cool arenas. So that's what hooked me. And I guess that kind of same as my brother John as well. And he perhaps didn't go on as many charters as myself, but he knew my father longer, obviously, because he was older, but he was around him a lot, and at the old St. Louis Arena in the broadcast booth, and the same thing is you see it and like, yeah, I want to do that when I get older.
Was that impression of Chris? I grew up with Dad, listened to Dad and Gus Skyle. We could hear AM games all the way from Chicago on that WKMX, I think it was KOX, that station. But when you were saying what you were just saying, Dan, that impression, and it'd be something, because I can imagine you saw so many players, fans come up to Dad that you were like, wow, that first impression of this is something that I would really like to give it a shot at. I mean, I know you went to Dayton and you studied journalism and all that. Did he really leave like this unbelievable impression?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's the impression too, as I get out there. And unfortunately, people of a certain age don't remember him, but people that are older, I still get it. I know my brother probably gets it more because he's in the NHL, he's in NHL arenas, frequently and every day for his life. But I still run into people in the sports world around college hockey and whatnot. And just, what a special broadcaster he was, but a special man as well. And you can see it, you can see it in their eyes. I mean, whether I'm especially here being back in St. Louis now, it's like, whether I'm at the dentist. I remember I came back here, I just moved back here about 2 years ago, right before the pandemic. and I say my name. It's like, oh God, here we're gonna get it here, just someone, and but it's cool. I'm not saying, oh my God, it's very cool, and I love hearing, that people remembering my father, and good memories. But I just can remember too, like little things. It's not even just all the people like Wayne Gretzky and all the blue bloods, if you will, or these big time people in hockey, but it would be the fan that would be in the 300 level at the arena that's probably had about 15 bushes, during the game. And then my dad would be walking down the long stairs at the arena and they'd just be like, we love you, Dan. Or, you'd feel that. It would be the everyday fan. It would just, and his presence is still felt in this community, much like his good friend, Jack Buck. So, they've had a few powerful big time broadcasters coming out of St. Louis.
I think that the really neat part about it in your discussion, and we want to talk more about you, but it's obviously with your dad being such an imposing figure within the game and broadcasting, and I know Pat Foley had a neat story when he was going through his retrospective, talking about how he'd always try to have dinner with your dad, and at the one point he actually went to dinner with your mom and dad, and he found out later it was their anniversary, but your dad insisted that Foley went because he had made the time to meet after a game at gate 3.5. But those voices, we were talking about Pat Foley, Mike, Doc Emmerich, your dad, and you just turned the TV on and it just filled your house. And those voices that aren't there anymore, but if you just say one thing, you go right back to that spot, right? Obviously your dad famous for the goal with Bobby Orr, and some of the I felt bad. We had Doc Emmerich on. I wish we would have asked him to replay his broadcast of the goal that he couldn't figure out if it was a goal when Patrick Kane scored in 2010. But those moments are etched that are so cool that we're starting the newer generations. We don't have those voices as much anymore. Your brother, the guys in Detroit are really good. Mickey Redmond in that, and those standard bearers, I guess, if you will. So I guess you got to carry that around proudly, because it is very special, and there aren't that many of those associations left anymore.
No, it's a good point. And, speaking of Mike Emmerich, he was always, I loved hearing him speak in reverence about my father all the time too, talking about a guy who's made his mark and left his mark. But, especially back then, there was, you think of the icons, like in Chicago, we'll go with Pat Foley, Harry Carey, Jack Brickhouse, but there was fewer broadcasters back then. We didn't have all these college sports networks. We didn't have sports on all day. Most of the games in Chicago, we certainly know for a long time, those home games were just on the radio, and a lot of marketplaces they were for a long time. So, you cherish those guys, and there was fewer voices. And, I think back to, what even added to my father's brilliance in a way in his career is he was a force in Canada as well. So maybe some of the biggest games he called were international games. And I think back to the 87 Canada Cup, and that might be some of the greatest hockey I've ever seen with Gretzky and Lemieux. And not to mention, I love that, those Russians, those teams are incredible. So yeah, I think it's a different time. There's just, there's so many different broadcasters, so many regional networks. Heck, there was 21 teams or there was 8 teams or 6 teams actually when he started broadcasting in the NHL as a host, probably for Hockey Night in Canada. And that's not a bad first job. I'll leave in Hockey Night in Canada as a host, but he always wanted to be a play-by-play guy, so he left in 1968 to come to St. Louis.
You've been very versatile with this. I mean, you've done a lot of different things. I don't know if hockey is, like I know you could do hockey and everything else. How do you become this versatile guy? Meaning, you've gone from doing some different sports, from soccer to hockey. I've seen you on different programs. What is it, Europe thing that you wanted to do, or were you told, hey, this is where we're going to put you? How does this work?
It's where the weird chances and breaks happen in this industry. I was always just a hockey guy, and you get pigeonholed. But even more so, hockey guys get pigeonholed, I think, more so than other broadcasters. And it's kind of funny because you think, you can describe action, that frenetic, chaotic action, but you can't do other sports, which, I obviously don't get. But anyway, I think it was in 2006. I was working for Mark Cuban's HD network, and it was great. I did Crosby and Ovechkin's games like all week because he was a visionary. All the networks didn't pick up those guys their rookie year, and we did all those games on HDNet. But anyway, long story short, that summer they needed a broadcaster for their MLS package because their guys were Glenn Davis was working for ESPN calling the World Cup. So I just dipped my toes and did, I think, about 2 or 3 Major League Soccer games. So long story short, like come 2010, I had an opportunity. And I was like, yeah, I could put together a tape, and it allowed me to pivot my career. And next thing you know, I'm calling a lot of different sports at the collegiate level as the Big Ten Network was just starting to explode as well. And continue to call a lot of games for them. So, and that also too, at the time I learned is I love hockey, don't get me wrong, but I also like it because I started to love soccer as well, or other sports. I love the sport I'm doing next the most because it's the preparation. It's the whole talking to the players, talking to the coaches, and just describing that live action. It's, sure, some sports are better than others, but, just the calling, like even like, for instance, basketball. I was never a giant basketball fan, didn't play it much, but to call a basketball game or, baseball as well. Sometimes I think of it as a slower sport or some softball. It's a blast. It's just, you're doing play-by-play and you're working with an analyst and you're trying to tell a story.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, and obviously on a much smaller scale, because we've gone from hockey to network newscasters to entertainers to authors and everything else, and can understand to that point where the energy around learning something new, doing some reading and doing some research about somebody's career and saying, oh yeah, I didn't, that Dan was the first voice of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and what was involved in preparing not only to be the voice of the Columbus Blue Jackets, but probably even the greater responsibility of selling the product. I know we talked to Doc Emmerich and we talked about how did you prepare for Olympic Games and stuff. And it was like, well, you got to remember, you can't be so techie because we got a lot of new people. So the learning aspect, no matter what the sport is, I'm sure, like you said, the energy around different people, different personalities had to be, just like you said, fired you up in whatever it was that you did. But like to the Columbus gig, was there a lot about, hey, we're not only calling games here, but we're selling this into a brand new market, and you approach it a little differently?
Well, yeah, off the air, yes, and on the air as well. But first, off the air, I was at a lot of strawberry festivals and little mini hockey rinks all throughout rural Ohio. It was cool, and I was 20, whatever. I was a young guy, and I had the time, and your golf tournaments, whatnot. Because especially in Columbus, it's great to see now the popularity of hockey there. And I go back there a lot with Ohio State, and actually they have a solid hockey program as well. But to see the amount of rinks there and to see what it's become, I think there was like 3 rinks there when it first started, and just how it's grown, and it's going to be a great hockey market. But yeah, some of that we would also try to do it on I'd think on the air as well. You don't want to completely dumb it down, but you would like to think you have some new viewers. But as I learned too, is they had both Dayton and Columbus had a history, long history of minor league hockey, and of course college hockey as well with Ohio State there. So they weren't complete neophytes, but I guess the struggle was then is because of the expansion drafts and what they gave NHL teams. Columbus just they struggled out of the gate for about 7. Some say maybe still a bit, but they struggled for a while. It was tough to get traction then with what you got from the NHL and the expansion draft.
Yeah, they weren't the Vegas Golden Knights coming out of the chute. There's no doubt about that. So that would be definitely difficult. But you mentioned college hockey, and it's great that as a hockey fan, especially nowadays with the Blackhawks, as John, will attest, going through whatever they call it, a rebuild, a reload, or whatever it is, just to be a hockey fan, to have that wide swatch of whether it's watching Notre Dame on Peacock on a regular basis and them being part of the Big Ten, or being on the Big Ten Network, or watching CBS Sports. It's really cool that college hockey is starting to get a lot more of the exposure that it deserves, as it's become so much more of a vehicle of sending ready-made players to the NHL.
100%, and more, and you're getting these superstars coming from college as well now, and these you just look at the University of Michigan, these high-end first-round draft choices that they're sending. And unfortunately, I still see the ratings. I had a chance to do a couple games for the Loveland Regional on ESPN, and I was just looking at the ratings, and even in the Frozen Four, and the ratings still are not great. But the thing is, you look at one now having ESPN's involvement in the National Hockey League, and I think they're starting to pick up more parcels of. I saw they pick up a Hockey East package a couple months ago. I think they're going to slowly maybe start to increase their college hockey coverage. But the ratings are right now in the National Hockey League. It looks they're up around 40%. Like those are big numbers. So I'm sure people, whether it's my boss at the Big Ten Network or whoever runs college hockey at ESPN, saying, yeah, let's try to get our numbers up like that, because you see the potential. And as you know, with anyone who's watched college hockey, it's sure, it's not on par with the National Hockey League. It's different. It's chaotic and fast, and of course they don't fight, but it's an incredible brand of hockey, and it sells itself. So if it continues to get that exposure, I think hopefully those numbers will come up, and especially not just men, but a lot of young women are playing, this game, right? So that's a great thing.
Dan, I want to ask you something, just to switch it here a little bit with you and Mark. When you came to Chicago, that was 06. Did you think when you came to Chicago that was going to be like maybe a place where you were going to be here for a while? Because that's what I thought as the viewer looking in. I thought you were very well prepared. You do kind of remind me of that Emmerich type announcer, that kind of thing. What was through your mind when you got hired by, we always talk about the markets. And I remember we were talking to like Chris Myers a couple of times, and Wayne Larrabee here, announcer in Chicago, did the Chicago Bear games. When you came to the Chicago market, were you like, wow, okay, I got this Chicago Blackhawk job, even though I know you had done games in St. Louis? What was going through your mind when the Hawks hired you then in 06?
Well, you're I don't want to say young and cocky, but you're young and confident. But I'd experienced adversity before my career with in Columbus with the breakup there in 2004. So it wasn't. I knew that I wasn't immune to that. That's this industry, and I also knew in the back of my mind, I'm coming to Chicago. It's not Oklahoma City. And you just, but I never knew with, how things would play out with Pat, going to work for the Chicago Wolves as well. And he really didn't leave that market. And of course, the death of Bill Wirtz, and that changed things as well, with that. But I guess you can certainly, in hindsight, I guess the 48-year-old Dan would have probably saw the possibility of that coming a lot better or a lot clearer, because it's an original 6 team. It's the Chicago Blackhawks. And at the time, they weren't the most popular team in town. I don't have to explain that to you guys.
Yeah, right.
For a while they weren't. And, that turned around quickly. And, and here we are, it's ebbs and flows. And now they're kind of, on another, they go through the peaks and valleys and whatnot, but that's such as life, such as sports. But I guess an older Dan would have, probably, I'm referring to myself in third person, but I would have saw that coming a little more clearly. But you never know what's going to happen in life and sports and whatnot. So it's because in retrospect, I was talking about HDNet. I guess it was right after the lockout. I was working there 2005, 2006, whatever it was. But that was a great job that I left. But they didn't have the NHL rights. They only had it for one more year. So it was really an easy decision for me. I was coming to Chicago, and I was kind of proud though that I ended up working for Big Ten Network and Chicago Fire. I stuck around there for until 2019. So I made it a few more years.
Definitely. Speaking of that, was there ever any thought in your mind as word leaked out that Pat Foley, and that's still a discussion that we're not going to have about whether or not he wanted to leave or it was an organization decision that we're going to go in a different direction with all the things going on? Did you ever give any thought to throwing your hat back in the ring when you heard that job was available?
No, just because I'd been down that path, and actually because I know too. I knew some of the guys in the running. I don't know them well, but they're these talented young guys at Big Ten Network, including I forget Chris's last name, who got the job.
Vorsters.
Chris Foster's.
Yeah.
So I knew that these guys, kind of not to the next generation, but they're gonna probably want to go with someone younger that hopefully is going to have that job for another 30 years. Like I think Chris is probably just around 30 years of age. So no, I never really, thought about that. not that there were just because, I guess both the Blackhawks and I had been down that path before. So I'm sure I wouldn't have been perhaps the right fit here in 2022.
Okay, so the 48-year-old Dan Kelly made that decision differently than the other Dan Kelly would have done. So, okay, we're covered there. So, but I wanted to go back. You were talking about college hockey. Wanted to jump back because it really does. It kind of has that. If you watch college baseball, right? You watch a College World Series when they go to Omaha, and it's not the best, like you said, it's not the NHL, but in a lot of instances, it becomes way more entertaining because they're only playing on the weekends and the energy levels, and there's not nights off, right? It's not skill-wise, it might not be the best, but 8-7 with North Dakota versus Denver, or Mankato State or Minnesota State or something like that, certainly provides an entertaining 2.5 hours for the viewer.
It does, and it's got a high skill level, because I think it still has a physical brand of hockey, but in terms of the National Hockey League, I don't think players, again, they'll get their heads knocked off, but maybe not as frequently in the NHL. So I think that you can try to make skill plays more. And to your point too, the energy, just usually 2 games a week, and sometimes you have bye weekends, and the atmosphere, the students, whether you're at Yost or I go to Pagula Ice Arena, Penn State, the list goes on. It used to be in Madison, had a great atmosphere. Hopefully Wisconsin and Tony Granato get that program going once again, or University of Minnesota. So many great atmospheres, and I don't even go to a lot of other places. I'm kind of Big Ten centric, but the atmosphere and the skill level is something to behold when watching college hockey. And the great thing is, back in the day, it used to be a bunch of Canadians. Well, now you've got international players as well. A lot of Europeans, and of course a ton of Americans as well.
Dan, do you see it could it become like one day like a college basketball where it's like, wow, we're gonna watch this, and could this happen in the United States? Because like you just said, players are coming from all over now. Before, it was all Canadian, especially like guys like me and Mark growing up. But because of where the structure of it's coming from, could you see it becoming something like that, let's say 10, 15 years from now?
I think that would be a gigantic step. I think that would be hard, because one, like you look at right before the COVID hit, and they've been having rumors about, as you guys know, there's no Division I hockey program in the state of Illinois, and that's tragic, considering all the great players that come out of there, and the great hockey city Chicago is. But right before, it was always rumored that hockey was coming to Champaign, University of Illinois, and that they just admitted a couple of weeks ago that I think the last knockout punch was COVID, and because it's so expensive to build an arena too. If you're going to have a Terry Pagula that's going to donate whatever hundreds of millions of dollars he did to Penn State to build this marvelous arena, that's how you start a hockey program usually. But having said that, they just announced 2 Division I hockey programs coming. Lindenwood University in St. Louis, and I think it's Augustine University, and one in Long Island started this past year as well. So they are coming. But considering that you have, it's kind of still a regional thing. There's no teams in the Pac-12, no teams in the SEC. So that's the big thing. If you could ever started spreading like wildfire down to those big conferences, then maybe you could start to think that way. But I think right now we're a long way off. But having said that, I never thought they'd be playing hockey right now, or college hockey in Arizona, and they are at Arizona State, and they're just building a new arena. So who knows?
Well, that's an interesting point then too, because and we talked to Coach Zombo, and you could tell from talking to Rick how clear. I mean, we sat up straight in our chairs when we talked to Coach Zombo, because there's just an air about him that there's no half-assing when you talk to him. It's very clear, right on point. And my son played ACHA hockey, and we played there a couple times, and you got that understanding. And then now you got the new building, but also, not to shame, but with the Illinois program, they just built a brand new building in Iowa City that puts Iowa potentially on the market, the University of Iowa, to be a player somewhere down the line, to be a Division I program as part of the Big Ten too. And if you offer kids a chance to play big, Division I hockey, even if it's Iowa City, they're going to end up there. So you're right about that. The big city, the whole is Chicago here. That's unfortunate when you look at Boston and all the other places. And when you look at statistically, the amount of players in Illinois that feed into all the USA hockey programs, it's weird, right? Because it's like basketball too, right? Tons of high level, high caliber basketball players who leave the state of Illinois, and you see them all over the country playing at D1 programs, and we can't keep them here.
No.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And hey, Iowa City is a pretty fun place. I've been there before on road trips. It's not bad. But another place I think of though, like along those lines, University of Nebraska too. Like you can go there and see the support that they'll have for volleyball or wrestling or whatnot. There's no doubt they would have incredible support for a sport like hockey that they probably not that familiar with in those parts. But still, yeah, it's I mean, where you guys know Chicago and Illinois better than me. I mean, and I know the Blackhawks were involved in trying to promote and support Illinois getting a program. They want to build a Division I hockey program. We think of like I don't know. I don't think of Northwestern. That's not first on my list. Where else would you think in Illinois that you could have a D1 hockey program? I
think part of the issue, I mean, you tried it, DePaul, on some level, but part of the issue we were talking, and I can't remember who it was. I don't know if we were talking to Billy Gardner,
Gino
Cavallini. What the mission was, there's so many people playing that nobody can take the time to actually go on a weekend, right? Because every weekend when you were playing, you probably weren't home. Your parents got tired of calling school with the hockey flu. They ran out of excuses for Friday because you never went to school on Friday, and then you're too tired to go to school on Monday. So you were either in Chicago playing, or we were in St. Louis playing. So those weekends when the college teams came, that schedule would be there. You weren't there to be able to play. And the natural one would be, and they tried it, was University of Illinois, Chicago, 3 blocks down from the United Center, had the pavilion, and now the fifth, third, I mean, there's 5 sheets of ice in, a 2 square mile area, and we can't put the team in there. Although the only thing that I think would be different, Dan, would be there's dorms now at the University of Illinois at Chicago, because I graduated from there in that, but that was more of a commuter school. So you didn't have people coming back. Everybody went back to the suburbs, got on the L and went out to the suburbs and didn't stay to be able to build that. But it's a shame because
we got a ton of rinks here. We got a ton of rinks.
The 2010 to 2016 run of the Blackhawks probably would have driven the hockey enjoyment up, and people would have been looking for it left and right. So,
yeah, I remember on the satellite dish watching UIC. I think it was the young Dale Talon's first broadcasting gig doing some of those games back then. But to your point too, like imagine, okay, excuse me, let's say Illinois has a team or Northwestern has a team. The amount of talent, whatever, just even that Chicago Mission program, but the amount of talent coming out of Illinois, like, yeah, I want to stay in state and try to win a national championship. I think you could have a stacked team is the sad part. If hopefully one day college hockey does come to the state of Illinois.
You would, and you could stay home and your family wouldn't have to travel to see you, and the television and the market would be phenomenal. It is a shame that maybe not so many people I think a lot of it though reverts back to, as Gino was talking about, people are just always playing, and it costs you a lot of money to play. And then there's not that much money left over for the entertaining. Because even now, the Wolves are on they're going into second or third round. They were the best team in the AHL, and their weeknight draw for, going to Allstate Arena is next to nothing because everybody's playing lacrosse, playing spring hockey, or doing whatever else. So it is hard in that regard to be able to do that. So we mentioned Gino. You had a big smile on your face. And Brett Hull. Any stories you want to share about some of those guys? I know Hull is famous and sometimes infamous, I guess would be the best way to put him, right?
Yeah, I was. I guess first off, I started with Gino because I covered his son at the University of Wisconsin. Aiden, I think, was his name. But I just read a story about Gino during COVID. I guess back in the day, he made a connection with a young man who was in a tragic victim of a burn. And he was in the burn unit, and he took all the Blues players with him. And it was just such a cool story, just because it brought tears to my eyes. And just, it's like, I wish I could be as good a person as Gino Cavallini, but yeah, Brett, I got to be around Brett. Actually, my first 3 years, I was the radio play-by-play voice of the Blues from 97 to 2000. So Brett was there for 2 of those years, and they were a little tumultuous as well. It was post Mike Keenan, but that's also when they didn't re-sign him, and he went on to Dallas and won a Stanley Cup in 1999. But yeah, he was great for the NHL. He had so much personality, that smile. Just he didn't give a what, like he'll just say whatever's on his mind, and that's oftentimes I think why he ran into problems with coaches. I wish I was around there when Keenan was there, because I was I guess the sick young hockey player. I mean, I always was a Mike Keenan fan because he had so much success, whether it be in Chicago or Philadelphia, and New York. Obviously not in St. Louis, but I would be intrigued to watch that whole dynamic, because it wasn't just Brett on that team. You had Wayne Gretzky for a while. You had Al McInnes. You had a lot of personality. Yeah, Grant Fuhrer. I mean, I could keep go on and on. So, but he of course had some fun and looked at the Stanley Cup Blues parade too, and they kind of I think they still have T-shirts. We went Blues. I think he had a few Bud Lights over the 48 hours up until that Stanley Cup parade. And there was some downtime, so the team took a while to get to the stage. Well, he got up on that live mic, and he had some fun on that live mic.
That is because there's also Jeremy Roenick, obviously another one of those characters, a lot cut along the lines of Brett Hull, not giving a bleep about what other people say or what they think about him. And he's just, flat out, I am who I am. And, he had the stories with him, with Keenan and guys chasing Keenan around. And, the one I remember, and I can't remember who it was, but Keenan had him skating when they were with the Blackhawks, and he sat on a chair until on the middle of the ice and just kept skating him around until somebody finally skated at Keenan and threatened to knock him off the chair. And Keenan was like, finally, somebody stood up to me. Now we're done. Skate's over. And no one knew. I mean, they skated for a half hour, and all they had to do was stand up to him, and that would have been the end of it. So, but yeah, he's, you forget, like you said, the New York, Chicago, Philadelphia.
He wound up in Calgary too.
Yeah, he won a championship in Russia. Didn't he win a championship in the KHL too? Right. I got a system will travel now, so no doubt about it. So speaking of traveling and different coaches and all, do you follow what's going on right now? Are you watching the playoffs and some of the things that are going on? And one of the things that struck us is they got to, your call on this, your input. You got Tampa and Florida playing now, and the way they spread it out, right? It used to be 116, and you kind of had the stronger teams playing their way through to meet at the end. And now you got, the Tampa, obviously Toronto's gone, but for them to come right out of the chute to have to play Tampa. And now Tampa goes right into play Florida, and you're going to lose another really good team. And not to say that Cal, on the other side with the Rangers in Carolina, but maybe if you split that up, you get those two teams back playing for a conference final.
Yeah, I like the old style. I agree with you. I like the old style. I know Commissioner Bettman said if it's not broke, we don't need to fix it. But I'm not saying it's broke. But to your point, like Minnesota is another team that went out early. They're a really good team. So. I agree with you. I like the old 1 versus 8 or whatnot. You can still have some upsets, but there's a reason you play that regular season, and you want to get rewarded. And I'd rather, if I finish that top seed, I'd like to face one of those weakling teams, not a team that's right up to my chin on par with me.
Yeah, because it's all about the parity, and when they do it this way, it just it just brings in, I guess, this element of surprise. And by the way, that Minnesota thing actually hurt our Chicago Blackhawks, because something with the thing with Fleury had so many games that if they got knocked out, now we lose a pick. So, oh geez.
Yeah, you had a first round pick that became a second round pick, but and they dodged the bullet because they could have ended up, no disrespect, but you could have ended up with like Dallas and the Kings on the West, and you lucked into the Battle of Alberta with Connor McDavid carrying, carrying the mantle now that the guy like Austin Matthews is out. But the funny part was, back to your Colorado and how good the Avalanche are, it'll be interesting to see. It's like they haven't played in 2 weeks because they dusted Nashville. But the quote that struck me throughout the whole playoffs is Daryl Sutter being so dry-witted. He's like, you play Colorado, that's just a wasted 8 days. And he was prophetic, because that's all it took, right? For Nashville, done, right? And he just stood there and told it like it was, right?
I know he's the best quote, and I love that quote as well. I was actually saying it to my family, because they're getting ready to play the Blues, but they're going to be. I don't know if Cale Makar, and there's a lot more to Colorado than Cale Makar, but I start with him. They're certainly going to be a tough out. I see everybody's picking Colorado over St. Louis, and I don't disagree. But the one thing I will say is, St. Louis is, they got bounced quickly by Colorado last year, but they're a better team, more deeper offensively with your guy Saad and Buchnevich. But I think Jordan Binnington, if he's got his swagger back, which it looks like he might, that could be scary for Colorado. But if someone's going to knock the swagger out of you, Colorado could be the team that could do it as well. Well,
it'll be interesting to see where they always talk about rust versus rest. If the Blues jump out and can kind of and steal that first game, now all of a sudden the home ice advantage, and game 2 puts a lot of pressure on Colorado. And one of the kids at third line grinder, kills penalties all, JT Comfort, Northbrook, Illinois kid, again, University of Michigan, just what we talked about, walk through the program there, and it was interesting because he didn't even play AAA until his midget year. He played Central States and just played travel at Northbrook. And I think his U16 or his U18 year played TI, and then went on and played junior, and then played the University of Michigan. So it's there. And again, talking about capturing those kids, but it is an interesting situation there. A team now, but you talk about, if you're good, people will follow the Caniacs. The energy and the fandom, the fervor around the Carolina Hurricanes, right? If you win, people will find you, even if it's in the heart of football country, or basketball in this case.
Yeah, and tip of the cap. I can remember even people, and some of it might have been my Canadian family being like, "Really, hockey in Nashville?" I'm like, "Well, have you ever been to Nashville? One, the market is booming. Get back to me in 20 years." But the same thing with Carolina. It's slower in Carolina. Of course, they won the Cup in 06. That helped. But there's a lot of competition with basketball, college basketball, NASCAR, whatever. But that's an area that's growing tremendously as well. First they started off in Greensboro there initially and played at a different rink until they actually moved to the Triangle area. But they do it differently there. They tailgate. I think the fans seem half hammered, so they're gonna make a lot more noise. But I think I love seeing that in a non-traditional market that they gutted it out. Now you've got a good hockey market. Now hopefully they'll start producing more hockey players. And I mean, I see you look at Commissioner Gary Bettman gets criticized for a lot of things, and I can see why. Whoever's going to be the commissioner is going to get criticized. But one thing I do give him credit for, and sure, it hasn't worked out, but it's devastating when a team loses their, you don't get a team back usually when you lose a team. And I think he might be running out of patience. It might be the final year, but he hasn't given up on the Arizona Coyotes, and I think that's a good thing. But now the time that might be expiring. I think if they don't start breaking ground in the next year, maybe they'll give up on the Arizona Coyotes. But
I think that could become a thing of the past. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what are they going to have 5,000 people? I think the rink they'll end up playing in a college rink, because I'm a big Chicklets fan, and Biz is always talking about that and wanting to keep the team there. But it's interesting how you're talking about grassroots, and if you look at a schedule now as far as tournaments are concerned, everybody wants to leave Chicago in a tournament, and they want to go to Florida to play, and they want to go to Carolina to play. They want to go, every tournament that ever goes on is booked solid is to go to Nashville, right? All you got to do is go to Nashville once with a travel hockey team, and parents are signing up before the kids are to go to the tournaments down in Nashville. But that eventually bleeds into you know, and you look at what Nashville with Ford, with the new facility that they have for the practice facility, and they sell bringing people down, and it just pumps more and more life into the game that you wouldn't necessarily expect. I think the other thing you talk about, it's kind of like a baseball or football thing here with the I can't think of the word. It's not uppity, but you feel that you know better. Where hockey in Canada has almost a religious fervor around it, which is pretty cool to watch, you know, Hockey Day in Canada and all. But here it's part of the experience. And like you said, you have a couple, 2, 3 in the parking lot with a burger, you go into the game, and then you go back out afterwards and you have a couple more. And the game is just part of the whole experience versus the game itself.
Right.
Yeah, it's you know, if you ever go to a game, and it's been a while, but you know, it's obviously a different audience if it's a corporate audience, if you're in a Toronto or a lot of these markets. But you know, I think it's great to see the variety. And like to your point, I think of sometimes maybe that, and this is a kid that's coming, I'm the only American in my family, so I'm not bad enough in Canada. It's a great nation, great hockey nation. But there was that little, like, this back in the day, like, no, this is our game. Well, no, it's, you know, it's our game. And, you know, I loved too growing up when in 1996, you know, I think in 1980, but I was too little, but 96 when the Americans dusted off Canada at the World Cup. And I love American hockey and seeing how it's grown, and you know, we're a hockey power now. It's awesome to see, and as a country, we're just going to get better because that footprint continues to expand. And we talk about all these places, you know, Dallas or these non-traditional markets, the Floridas, the Carolinas, the Nashvilles, all these, and say I see it here in St. Louis. They have one of the deepest alumni associations. Mm-hmm. Well, all these guys coach. Jeff Brown is a great coach. And, you know, Gino Cavallini up in Chicago. All these guys, they start coaching, and then they just add to the talent pool with their expertise and knowledge.
Exactly.
It is
Dan
amazing.
and Mark, I'm gonna have to get off this guy. I have kind of a call coming in here, but I'll let Mark close it off here tonight, Dan. But Dan, I want to say thank you because I did reach out to you. I have to do something right at the moment, but I got to tell you, your versatility and your professionalism really shows. I remember when you came here to Chicago, I really enjoyed that season here with the Blackhawks. Those 2 seasons you were here with the Blackhawks with Eddie, of course, and Mark and I know Eddie pretty well. And again, I want to thank you for coming on here. I'm just going to pull off, and I'll let Mark have the final say with you here today. But this was really a great experience, and your knowledge of a lot of things that you do is second to none. And again, always remember your father, and thank you for coming on here today.
I appreciate the kind words. I don't deserve them. It's awesome to be on with you.